Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the W Production Podcast. I'm Dr. John Meis with my partner, Wendy Briggs. Hey, Wendy, how things going?
Amazing, amazing. I'm so excited about our topic here today.
I know I love this. And the topic is going to come from a book that you read about a company that I really highly admire. So tell us about the book.
Yeah. So, as you know, Dr. John, as our listeners probably have heard before, with our consulting clients, we choose a book to focus on every quarter or so that has some really great takeaways and principles for dentistry. And I started reading the one that we were considering for this quarter, and I got one chapter in, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is the
Nice.
book we're going to focus on. It's got so many crazy, valuable lessons.
So you
And,
threw away the book and you never finished it.
right,
No, I'm
right.
kidding.
But it's a little counterintuitive because the book
Yeah.
is called Fans First, and it's by Jesse Cole, and it's the story of the Savannah Bananas. And so you might
Oh,
think,
awesome.
what does that really have to do with dentistry and or business? This is a minor league baseball team that's kind of taken the country by storm. But I love all of the lessons that they share in this book about how they did it. So
That's
there's some
awesome.
really
For those
awesome
of
takeaways.
you who are not familiar with the Savannah Bananas, it's a minor league baseball team. However, they formed their own league and they created all these different rules to make it more entertaining. And it's super fun. Every year they play a couple of games here in Phoenix, and I've wanted to go every year, and they're always sold out. They sell out way ahead of time. They play in the Cubs spring training facility, and they're always sold out. And the tickets are just really tough to get. And so I want to hear what is the principle number one that made you say, this is it.
Yeah, well, the first thing that they talked about is, when Jesse and his wife bought the team, they were struggling. They were a typical minor league baseball team that had always gone under. And so when they bought the team, the first concept that they decided to do was to do the opposite. And they
Nice.
rejected all traditional industry standards, and they sought out the friction points that customers hated and did everything they could to eliminate them. And so again, for the Savannah Bananas, as a part of their story, this meant removing all convenience fees and offering all-inclusive ticketing and eliminating corporate billboards and just doing everything differently from that standpoint. And it was a huge risk, right? So I love that because when it comes to dentistry, I think we could use some shaking up. I think we could use some, thinkers, some different thinking, and we really could look at all things patient experience and do the opposite with a lot of
Yeah.
those things, and it would probably do us a lot of good.
Yeah. No, it's so true. There's this kind of conventional wisdom in dentistry that this is the way you do it. And patients, it leaves you very little room to wow patients. And the idea of doing the opposite is really clever. And what's a good example of doing the opposite in dentistry? I've got a couple.
Yeah, yeah,
Go
I've
ahead.
got a couple too. For me, it starts with everything. Even the title of his book, Fans First. Like, too often we make decisions based on what the team or the doctor wants, right? What
Yep.
would change about our patient experience and our practice retention or our practice growth if we made this commitment to always think about patients first? Like,
Yep.
every decision we make should revolve around patients first. For some people, I think that they wouldn't want to do that at all. They're so heavily dependent on what's best for me or what's best for the doctor. This is how the doctor wants things. This is how, the team wants things. Often we look at hygiene. Classic example is we look at what systems are happening in hygiene. And sometimes the office manager, the doctor don't even know what we're doing or why we're doing it that way. It's just that's the way it's always been done. That's the way the hygienists want it to be done. So very little thought is put into how to structure things to always put patients first.
Yep. I love that. It reminds me of a past client of ours. His name is Dr. Roger Abbott, not Roger Rabbit, Roger Abbott. And he just was a super fun guy. And he had a large group practice in Atlanta area. And often you see somebody who is the founder of a large group practice and they are the producer. They're going, going, going. And he said, "I'm not the producer. I'm the maitre d. I'm the person. I'm the concierge. I'm the person that makes sure everybody has fun and everybody gets gets exactly what they want, that everything's all customized. And I do all the setup for that myself, so that people are entertained and happy throughout their entire dental experience. It's just doing something different.
Doing something different. And you asked for a specific example, and one that I can think of right away is we always get the question, where do you see the new patients first, doctor or hygiene? And too often we have this rigid set way.
Exactly.
Our new patients have to see the doctor first. And state
Yep.
law says the doctor has to assess first. And we're like, yes and no, right? I mean, there's certainly laws that we have to follow, but there's different approaches that you can take. Even if the state law says doctor needs to see the patient first, you can still schedule the patient where the patient prefers to go, right?
Absolutely.
And have
Yep.
systems that support that each way. So that's just an example of ways where we really could, do the opposite.
Yep. So being opposite is having the flexibility to see the patient where the patient wants to be seen, rather than having some rigid, preformed idea that you have to, try to pound these square pegs into a round hole, and it just doesn't work.
It doesn't. So I think that principle of, what do patients really want and how can we give them more of it is really, I think, integral to doing the opposite. What do patients want? Let's not think about what the doctor wants first. Let's think about what patients want first. And then let's try and figure out what that looks like in today's world. And Dr. John, we've studied this for years. And we've talked about this, and we've taught about world-class patient experience for more than 15 years now. And I can tell you that what patients want today is different than it was 10, 12, 15 years ago.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So we developed a tool a few years ago called the No Eliminator, right? So figure out what are the things that patients are asking for, that you're saying no to. And I've seen consultant after consultant after consultant say, okay, we need to try to find a way to tell them no in a way that's not going to make them mad. No, well, let's think about it differently. Let's think about, well, let's find a way to say yes to that. What would we have to change, and what would the impact be if we found a way to say a true yes?
Right. And that's the key. So I think, there's a lot of really other fun lessons we can learn in that book from doing the opposite that I think are timely for dentistry. And then of course the book goes on and every single chapter is as amazing as the last. And the next principle that he talks about was fans first and entertain always.
Yeah.
And, as I mentioned before, that's the name of the book. And the key here with this concept is he encourages all business owners, practice owners to shift their focus from the product, which in his world was like the baseball score, to the experience. And every employee should be empowered to create spontaneous moments of joy. I loved that.
I love,
Create
you're a
spontaneous
huge
moments of joy.
Disney fan,
Yes.
and Disney does this really, really well. You go to a ride, there's a line. They can't help there being a line, because sometimes there's more people there than others. Some weeks and some weekends or whatever are more popular. They can't help but have lines, but they build in all different kinds of things to make those lines more entertaining. They don't let you see what the length of the line is by the way they design the line. And then they'll have TVs, they'll have stuff painted on the wall, they'll have uh, roaming characters, all kinds of things to entertain while you're going through the line, so that you aren't irritated by it.
Right. And there's all different kinds of lessons. There's many companies and people that we look to when we look at, world-class patient experience. But, one of my favorite Disney examples is, while people are lined up and waiting for the parade, every employee is empowered to create those moments of joy. And so we had one guy come by that was, picking up trash, but he started this impromptu, what seemed to be impromptu. And after about a few minutes, I was like, this is not impromptu. This is completely staged and planned. But he started like his own little mini version of Stomp in the middle of the road while everyone's lining up for the parade. He's not the parade, he's not the entertainment, but he's just the guy picking up trash. And then he's like, I'm going to put on a little show like Stomp. And all of a sudden we got 4 or 5 people joining him, and they're all making music with their trash can and their, all their implements that they do their job with. And I was like, this is awesome. And
Yep.
it probably was their idea. How can we
Yep.
entertain while people are sitting here, waiting for the
Yep.
parade. So those spontaneous moments of joy in dentistry, there's so many opportunities that we could do the same thing if we cared. Dr. John, you mentioned on a call we did with our doctors not too long ago about how when people leave a dental practice, often it's due to indifference.
Yep.
And if we are really focused on creating these spontaneous moments of joy, I don't think any patient would feel as if the team or the doctor or the practice as a whole is indifferent to them
Yeah.
and their
Yep.
experience. I think that really, really helps drive patient retention at the same time as improving patient experience.
No, I totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. So, what's another one of the principles, Wendy? Let's hear it.
Yeah. This one kind of is similar to the last one, but I loved a lot of their stories about it. This is the next principle was to create craveable moments. So to
Hmm.
design extravagant emotional surprises that turn casual buyers into passionate brand evangelists. And so the Bananas achieved this by they created an all grandma dance team, right?
Yes.
So they have the granny bananas or something like that that come out and dance, which is completely the opposite of what you would expect. I think I
Love
saw a
it.
few World Cup videos. Those things have been going viral here lately, and it's been fun to see them. But one of the fans from Europe, was just blown away by the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders that they had flown in for one of the teams, or they had them performing with the USA team, and they were just shocked. That's what you expect when you see a dance team take the
Yep.
stage or come out onto the field. But the Bananas have this
Oh,
grannies,
that's great.
these granny bananas, and that's awesome. They have players on stilts. You mentioned
Yeah.
they changed all the rules to speed up the game and to keep it more entertaining, and so people just love it. And these characters, these people that are on the Savannah Bananas teams, they aren't the best baseball players, but they're entertainers who can also play ball. And
Yep.
so it's really, really fun to watch that. So these are, emotional surprises that turn these people into brand evangelists. And you mentioned it's super hard to get tickets. They have this draft. They also have rules where you cannot transfer or sell your tickets or you're banned.
Right.
And
Yep.
so, they're carefully controlling all aspects of the customer experience, which I think
Yeah.
is awesome.
And it's so funny. It's an athletic contest, but nobody cares who wins,
Right.
right? Because they've had
Happy
so much
game.
fun along the way that they don't even care who wins.
Right? And so we've seen practices do this too. When we talk about world-class patient experience, we'll talk about these moments of delight, as we often call them legends. You want to create these moments that become legends in the practice. Um, Things like um, Will Gadara, we learned this concept from him years ago when he heard some people. He runs a five-star Michelin, like the highest ranking restaurant in the world in New York City, and he heard one of his customers at the table saying they've had a wonderful time in New York. They're leaving to go to the airport, but the only thing they didn't do is they didn't get to have a New York City hot dog. And so, that was a legendary moment that they took advantage of. He sent somebody out to get a hot dog from a street cart, and they prettied it up and put it on a plate, and the people were just blown away.
Oh yeah.
That's a
That's
legendary moment, this moment of surprise that created those brand evangelists. And so we have dentists doing similar things for celebrating birthdays with patients. We have practices that have well thought out gifts that they can share with patients if they've been kept waiting, or we have one group that will actually find out when the braces go on. What's the thing that the teenager is going to miss the most about having braces, whether that's, caramel apples or whatever it is. And then when the
yeah.
braces come off 2 years later, they have that waiting for them. That's
Oh,
legendary. you know?
that's awesome. And for entertainment value, you mentioned New York City. We've had multiple practices, clients in New York City that have. It's not unusual for theater people to have day jobs
Right.
and be in the theater at night. And of course, theater work is intermittent, let's say.
Mhm.
So they'll have these very talented people. And one of the practices that we're aware of, their team members made a super fun video about Invisalign using a song that was very popular at the time, and it was edgy. And I show it in lectures sometimes, and the audience is always like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they did that!" But that stood out. It was entertaining, and people really recognize that as being different.
Yeah, and those moments can go viral, right? And viral awareness, I would say most dentists don't want to be viral. It's not something that we need to grow the practice, but it does help you leverage your name in your community, right? When you provide these legendary moments because it drives a much higher level of reviews because you've
Yep.
created those, brand evangelists. It creates referrals jump up when we're focused on creating some of these moments, and certainly new patient numbers jump too when people can't help but talk about the experience that you're providing.
And one of our practice clients in Florida, their social media, they say it helps them get patients. But the big thing, the big impact it's had for them is it attracts team because they demonstrate on their social media posts that it's a fun place to work, that everybody gets along, that everybody has fun and a little bit of seriousness and a little bit of silliness in the day. So they really have mastered it.
Yeah. So the last thing was to leverage constraints, and we talk about this a lot. They said for them, the lack of a massive budget forced creativity.
Yeah.
And the most viral and unique ideas were born out of just sheer necessity because they had no money for traditional marketing. And we hear that a lot from dentists. Right now dentists are being squeezed and they feel like they've got, constraints with cash flow that are beyond their control. And some of them probably would appreciate some strategies to help their marketing budget, their marketing
Yeah.
dollars go farther and have a higher level of impact. And so I think, understanding that if we completely do the opposite, we be creative, we create these moments, just like we said, the impact helps those marketing dollars go farther because um, we're getting traction outside of the usual mailers or social media ads or whatever that can really be costly. So, I think as well, practices will say, gosh, we just don't have a budget for all these fancy things. Well, having these legendary moments doesn't always mean that we have to spend all of this money. We've seen really resourceful, creative teams do a lot with a little, but it has a tremendous impact if you're putting patients first. That's the key.
Yep, for sure. And, like you said, a little bit of creativity can go a very, very long ways. And one of my early marketing people that I was really learning a lot from said, "Well, if you're putting out a piece of marketing, and what's on your marketing could be true for any other practice, that's a really crappy marketing. You've got to be more creative than that.
Yeah.
And once you get creative, you stand out. Once you stand out, you stand up."
Yeah, and I love that too. That principle of removing constraints is critical for us too. A number of years ago, probably 10 years ago, we came up with our, I think it was at one point like 65 new
Hmm.
patient experience
Yeah.
checklist, and now it's probably more than 75. We keep adding things to it. We've added AI to that list. Are we using AI with radiographs and all those things? And the whole purpose of that was to view every single touch point as a part of the new patient experience through the
Yeah.
patient's eyes and have the patient actually, um, I guess, experience, rate ourselves. How are we doing through the patient's eyes? How does the patient truly experience all of these really important elements in our practice? And I can tell you that as you look at each of those things on the checklist, a lot of them are about removing constraints, making things more seamless, making things easier, um, even down to the simplest things of what does the patient see, hear, and smell when they walk into the reception area for the first
Yeah.
time. Those are things that are really important because it creates that emotional reaction that the Savannah Bananas realized was so critically important to their overall success.
Yep. And before anybody gets overwhelmed by a 75-point checklist, let me say that simplicity is one of the core values of TTI. And you can look at that 70-point list, you can put it on the wall, you can throw darts at it. You can throw three darts at it. You can pick out three things. And if you made those three things special, you've just come a long ways. If you make those three the opposite of what everybody expects, if you make it entertaining, if you make it so that it's removing a constraint, you can just change three things and it really will have a big impact on your patient experience.
Yeah. And if you're looking for some additional guidance and support, our podcast listeners probably know that we have quarterly practice growth retreats. We actually have one coming up in Boston, and the entire topic of that retreat is excellence at every touch point. And that's actually going to be my lecture. I'm going to go into a deep dive on that patient journey checklist, and we're going to create a map out of it. And we're going to talk through how to be more excellent in many of those touch points. Dr. John, you're going to be digging into what patients really want in today's world. And, the entire theme of this retreat is all things patient experience. So if
Yep.
you are a member, I'm hoping you've already registered. It's going to be fantastic. If you aren't yet a member, we've got a couple things for you. On our podcast homepage, we will actually have a PDF of the current draft of that patient experience checklist that you can download. We also will have a link there as well if you'd like to have information about joining us as a guest at our retreat in Boston on July 17th and 18th. We actually only have a few seats left
Yeah.
for guests. We're running out of space. It's a very, very highly demand location. Boston's a beautiful city in the summertime. And we have a few seats left. So if that's something that piques your interest and you love all things patient experience like we do, go to the podcast homepage and get that information.
Yep. We'd love to see you there. Again, there's only a handful of guest seats left, but there is some left. So, all right. Very good. Well, Wendy, that's it for another episode of the W Production Podcast. We'll see you all next time.
See you next time, everybody.